Things are already getting busy this week for the Miami Hurricanes in the transfer portal.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy first official transfer portal day. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the portal, I know for several days we'll be getting reports about guys who are declaring for the portal. It's officially been open today. Thank you for making us actually your second listen and watch today. But my guy, Brad Tejeda, so I was talking off air with Brad, who's about to join us, and he told me he's got a spreadsheet. And I'm like, say less, you're coming on the show today. So Brad does an awesome job on the Caneswear Daily Miami Hurricanes podcast. Brad, how are you, my friend? And we're starting. We've already had a player visiting Miami today. Things are heating up.
Yeah, as always, man. Thank you as always for letting me join the show, talk some Hurricanes football, and with this transfer portal, man, every 2 minutes it seems like a new target jumps into the portal. There's tons of names out there. Whether Miami goes after some of these guys is to be determined. But like you said, man, I got a whole spreadsheet, not only of portal targets that we're going after, but current roster breakdown, kind of an idea of where we're at from a future standpoint of how many of these guys that are coming back on the season actually have production as far as snap counts, how many guys are going to be returning, how many are leaving, but a lot of questions for our Miami Hurricane fans, and we hope to answer most of them on the show today. But transfer portal's hot, man. There's a lot of rumors going around of possible big names jumping in the portal. We'll see if that happens or not. But as of right now, man, I'm as up to date as it could be, at least within the last 5 minutes with this portal stuff. So can't wait to talk.
Well, here's one I'd like to ask you about, because you mentioned there's a lot of rumors out there, and some of these rumors just aren't real. And I'd like to know, which ones of these are, because one that's been going around for about the last day is Dylan Raiola. Is he going to leave Nebraska? And, he's a double legacy from Nebraska. His father and uncle played there, but his grandpa played at Miami back in the 70s. And so there have been some of these reports linking, Raiola, Nebraska quarterback, to Miami. But I haven't seen it or heard it from anyone reputable. And it also looks as though Nebraska is going about their business recruiting receivers in the portal as if Raiola is still going to be their quarterback. So am I right to say that one is probably fiction?
Yeah, I agree with you. I haven't heard it from anybody reputable as far as inside the building that would link Dylan Raiola and Miami together. I know that was a rumor that happened, through his recruitment process as well. But as we know, the Raiola family, especially his father, they're very invested in that Nebraska program, right? So I think Raiola sticking in at Nebraska, and to your point, them going after some targets in the portal at wide receiver and other positions, it's kind of writing on the wall. I'd be very surprised if someone like Dylan Raiola enters the portal. I know another rumor that's been going around is waiting till some of these bowl games, in the playoffs, get finished, and maybe someone like Quinn Ewers from Texas ends up leaving, because obviously Arch Manning is the next guy up. He's another rumor name that's been thrown around, but again, nothing credible that I know of between Quinn Ewers or Dylan Raiola. But I will say this: quarterbacks, obviously, in the transfer portal is going to be another huge question mark to see what Miami does this go around. Obviously, we landed a huge guy at quarterback this past cycle with Cam Ward, and we saw what he was able to do for us in just 1 year. But what's interesting in all this, Alex, is this, right? Before you even go look into the transfer portal, you got to look at what you have in the building, right? And when you look at what you have in the building, you got Cam Ward leaving, Reese Poffenberger, who will be entering the transfer portal as well, already announced that. You only have 3 quarterbacks left in that room, with Emory Williams, who obviously played a couple snaps this past season, and then obviously played some games last year for us. Judd Anderson, who hasn't had a college snap, and then Luke Nickel, who will be an incoming true freshman who is super great in the high school level, but it's still going to take some time for someone like him to get adjusted to college. So you got 3 quarterbacks with only one of those guys getting any college snaps at all. And, there is some speculation within the fan base. Is Emory Williams that guy to take us not necessarily the next level of where Cam Ward did, but can he get the baton and kind of run with it, right? And, there are some optimism where Emory Williams could definitely do the job. I think he definitely can. But at the same time, when you look at these quarterback targets that we're talking about, whether it's, a Connor Wigman or a Jackson Arnold, who seems to be, pegged at going to Mississippi State. You got Caden Salter from Liberty, who I believe Miami kicked the tires on with him this time last cycle. He's a guy that ran for 1,000 yards. And I believe Syracuse and Colorado are probably going to be the two main destinations for someone like Caden Salter, who has visits set to both of those schools. But then you got John Mateer from Washington State, which obviously there's somewhat of a relationship between him and Cam Ward, but he also has a better relationship with his OC, who is now at Oklahoma, right? So what happens with someone like John Mateer, which kind of leaves you with just one or two names, right? And the names I want to mention is obviously right off the bat, Darian Mensah from Tulane, who is one of the top quarterbacks in the transfer portal and is a redshirt freshman, a guy that can really pocket presence, pocket awareness is really up there. He's not going to run the ball a ton, but he's probably the best pure accurate passer out of the bunch of what the guys that are available right now. But the other interesting thing to this is if you bring in someone like Darian Mensah, who has 3 years left of college football, what does that say to someone like Emory Williams still in the building, right? And who's to say Cam Ward does play in this bowl game? I know there's been some conspiracies going around, and obviously the video floating around that he is going to play. Let's see if that indeed happens. But if he does, now you don't even get that audition for Emory Williams, not only to see if he is going to be that guy for next year for Miami, but he also doesn't get that audition for other schools if we do end up going back in the portal and getting someone that could be more talent caliber than Emory Williams, right? So if you get someone like Darian Mensah, what happens to Emory Williams in the long run? Are you still left with 3 quarterbacks? Does he jump the boat? Or is it best that Miami kind of saves their money for the defensive side of the ball, doesn't overspend at quarterback, and still get somewhat of a project type of guy, not necessarily someone like Reese Poffenberger, but someone of that caliber as far as from a smaller conference? A guy I would really look at that I think is interesting is going to be Chandler Morris from North Texas. Had 3,700 yards, 31 touchdowns, was at Oklahoma and TCU prior to North Texas. So this is a guy that's bounced around a couple big-time programs before settling in at a smaller program and kind of redeeming himself. And he's a guy that is very capable of slinging the rock. And he's a guy that you don't necessarily have to overspend. And he's a player that could come into this quarterback room, push someone like Emory Williams, and not necessarily scare any of these quarterbacks away from still wanting to be in the program. Because at the end of the day, you still need at least 3 or 4 bodies in that quarterback room. But I think it's going to be interesting at that quarterback position. I don't know if Miami necessarily goes after the big fish or the big home run at the quarterback.
Yeah, and like you said, if they don't at quarterback, you need to make sure you're allocating resources to other positions. I want to stay on the offensive side of the football here. A player that Miami apparently is interested in now, who just hit the transfer portal today, is receiver Eric Singleton from Georgia Tech, who's been a star over there. That looks to be a player that Miami is going to go after. He already knows the ACC for what that's worth. He, beat Miami a couple months ago, unfortunately for us, but Eric Singleton is one of those receivers out there. We're also big fans of CJ Daniels from LSU, who's in the portal. And I'm getting kind of mixed messages from people I talk to on Kevin Concepcion, because the national reports don't tend to mention Miami being in the mix. But, someone did tell me today that Miami might be in that kind of top 3 with him, with Alabama and Texas A&M. I don't know if that means Miami's a distant third or if we have a puncher's chance, but everyone who listens to Locked On Canes knows what a big Kevin Concepcion fan I am. But maybe Singleton could be the guy they have the better shot at.
Yeah, I think this time last year, Kevin Concepcion was that guy that hit the portal that Miami was definitely eyeing on to really be Xavier Strepo's next guy up in replacement. And unfortunately, we went a different route, went with Sam Brown, and he stayed at NC State, got a nice hefty bag to stay at the Wolfpack. And now that he's in the portal, you would think he would be the guy that Miami is going to go back into the portal and kind of eye on once again. But to your point, Eric Singleton, who is a guy that Miami faced this past year over at Georgia Tech, had 104 catches, 1,500 yards, and 9 touchdowns in just 2 seasons at Georgia Tech. And he's a guy that could play inside, outside if he wanted to, more of a slot wide receiver, would probably be perfect for Xavier Strepo's replacement this year. And I think he is a level up above Kevin Concepcion. So, to the rumors of Kevin Concepcion maybe possibly going and looking at other programs, maybe someone in Eric Singleton is maybe just one step up above Kevin Concepcion. But I think Eric Singleton may be a guy that you may want to watch at another big-time SEC program. I know Georgia is in the mix for someone like Eric Singleton. It's going to be hard to battle with someone like Georgia, man, unfortunately, between what they are doing on the football field each and every year. They kind of got the money allocated to the right spots right now. And you got to say, man, unfortunately, the way the season ended for Miami and how much money we allocated into the portal, even though we have 10 wins, possible 11 wins, I think, me personally, I think the people that are writing these checks aren't really invested in football, like as far as watching the game as much as us. And they're just more worried about the end result. And I think getting a guy like Cam Ward-Martinez and investing as much as they did this past cycle with the transfer portal, I think the least amount of expectations was at least getting to Charlotte, right? And we didn't do that. So who's to say that even if we do have the money allocated in the transfer portal or the funds like we did last year, are we going to just be able to just stroke checks and write them out without looking and batting an eye? Or are we going to be a little bit more critical with some of these decisions? Not to mention a lot of these players that have entered the portal, they don't have big fish guys like they had in this past class when we got Cam Ward and Damian Martinez. You're not going to get those type of guys in this transfer portal. But other than Eric Singleton, you mentioned CJ Daniels out of LSU, who it seems like we're having communication with. I believe he's one of 3 players currently in the transfer portal that Miami has already scheduled a visit with. Other than CJ Daniels, you have Jordan White from Liberty, who played center and guard in the last 2 years. I believe he's visiting December 17th. And then you also got Chasen Johnson, cornerback from UCF, who had 4 starts as a true freshman, 452 snaps. He'll be visiting Monday or today or next Monday, I believe. But another guy I do want to mention at wide receiver now that we're talking about it. Under the radar guy, like I mentioned before, if Eric Singleton ends up, staying in Georgia and going to Georgia, the Bulldogs, and then Kevin Concepcion ends up going elsewhere, another under the rated guy is Isaiah Sentinga from Arkansas. He's a guy that is not only crafty, he can catch, over 1 or 2 guys, even though he's a more smaller slot guy. He's also a great return guy. And I think losing a guy like Chris Johnson, losing, the Washington brothers, we need speed, we need returners. And he's a guy that could kind of do 2 and 1. And he's not necessarily someone that you're going to have to break the bank over as well. So I think Isaiah Sentinga is also another name to look out for at Arkansas. And of course, there's other guys. You got Dane Key from Kentucky, Arnold Virgil from Miami, Ohio. He's 6'.
Yeah, I saw that. I think we offered him. He tweeted it out that we offered Virgil.
Yeah, we just offered him. He had 816 yards and 9 touchdowns. He's 6'4", 190. I know Miami fans are screaming for a more, bigger body possession receiver. I think besides Virgil, I think the only other guy that kind of fits that build is Dane Key from Kentucky. And then Darian Brown's another guy very similar to Concepcion, Singleton, and Sentinga from Arkansas, who is a kick returner, could play wide receiver as well. I think those 4 guys kind of all fit in the same boat. As long as you're able to land one of those 4 guys, I think that will fix not only the returning issue, but maybe fill in that slot role of Xavier Strepo. But big body guys, CJ Daniel, Dane Key, and Virgil from Miami, Ohio.
We could definitely use a kick returner. I mean, now not that we had a whole lot of success in the return game this year, but our primary kick returner is in the transfer portal, and Chris Johnson. We'll talk about who else, because we had a couple more announcements today, which other Miami players are leaving. There's probably going to be a few more who follow them. Just if you kind of play the numbers game and you look at certain guys who weren't getting a lot of playing time here and may look for more playing time in other places. So my friends, you want to keep it locked. We got our guy Brad Tejeda with us, and we're nowhere near done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. I started my Christmas shopping, maybe a little late, but it's me here. I procrastinate, and I'm all over Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality and taste of Omaha Steaks. It's guaranteed perfection in every single bite. And right now, you can save on unforgettable gifts with 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, score an extra $30 off with promo code College. I use my own promo code because it works. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated gift packages featuring gourmet favorites. From legendary steaks to mouth-watering desserts and so much more. Save 50% off site-wide for a limited time at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with promo code COLLEGE. Minimum purchase may apply. We're also proudly brought to you by FanDuel. Guys, you want to get in on the NFL action and tackle that action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more right on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with that $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you for making this transfer portal episode of Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. Alex Donno alongside Brad Tejeda from Caneswear Daily. Miami Hurricanes podcast does a fantastic job, and Caneswear is an awesome brand. You guys should support it. All right, Brad, the latest portal departures we've seen, Miami's going to lose A.J. Allen, running back, into the transfer portal. So 2 running backs now on the way out with A.J. Allen and Chris Johnson. Miami's also losing cornerback Robert Stafford to the portal. That adds to the list that's already included Robbie and Bobby Washington, Chris Johnson Jr. is mentioned, Reese Poffenbarger, interior offensive lineman Antonio Tripp, and walk-on cornerback Miles Mu-Young are going in the portal. So something but Miami's in pretty good shape still in the running back room, but do you think just based on the body count now, which is getting kind of low, they might need to bring in somebody? Now, at the top, they're top-heavy. They're going to have Jordan Lyle and Mark Fletcher back. Gerard Pringle is looking really good. Chris Wheatley-Humphrey presumably is still going to be in the room, but we probably need a 5th, right?
Yeah, I would say Miami definitely needs to look into adding another running back, maybe more of a power running back, someone that will fit and help someone like a Mark Fletcher. It seems like besides Mark Fletcher, the rest of the guys in that running back room that are left are all kind of fitting the same type of mold and running style, more of that quick sideline to sideline type of guy that could kind of get it and go. We need another power bruiser running back, especially the way Mario likes to attack those defenses. And not having a guy like Cam Ward next year, you're going to have to rely on the run a little bit more. And Mark Fletcher, as great as he is, you do want to have someone that can complement him when he does get a little bit banged up. One guy I will mention is probably Ismail Mahdi from Texas State. He's 5'9", 190, led the nation in all-purpose yards in 2023. He only has 1 year left, 2-time All Sun Belt first team. He's a bruiser running back. He's another guy that really you're not going to break the bank, and he's a guy that could complement this running back room well. Again, another position group where I don't expect Miami to get the home run or the big name guy. I think that's going to be more of wide receiver and defensive side of the football when it comes to the transfer portal. But the interesting about the transfer portal, before we even get to that, is you talk about, good shape of the guys that have already announced that they're leaving the portal. But Alex, unfortunately, we have to look at the full picture. And it's not just the guys that have currently announced that they're entering the portal. You also got to remember all the guys currently on the team that made an impact this year, right? And when you look at this roster, right, you have 85 scholarship spots. You have 30 out of those 85 players on this roster are going to be leaving the program, whether they're seniors, whether they're graduating, whether they hit the portal like some of the names we mentioned.
And can I say something real quick before, and then you can continue? Because I know some people are going to think like we forgot that Damian Martinez exists. The reason why we omitted him is I think he's going to go to the NFL. That was his plan. I know he's got 1 more year of eligibility, but I think his plan all along was to play 1 more year, go to the NFL. So that's why we didn't mention him being in the running back room, because I think he's going to declare. But I just wanted to get that out, Brad, and I apologize for so rudely interrupting you.
You're good, man. So like I mentioned before, you usually got an 85 scholarship limit. Luckily for all college football teams, after this season ends, that goes to 105, but it's not 105 scholarships. You're still at the 85 scholarships, but schools now have the ability to get to 105 roster cap. Whether how a school designates that and how these players come into the program is a different story, but you are allowed now after the season's over to at least get to that 105, which is going to be interesting for a coach like Mario Cristobal and how he kind of works out this depth chart going forward. Because like I'm about to mention, you had 85 scholarship players. You're going to have 30 that have already are going to be leaving this program. Another 5 to 6 guys that have not announced yet that could possibly leave the program, right? So now you're floating around 60 to 50 players. You got 21 incoming freshmen that are going to be joining the program currently after this year's over, right? So that gets you right around 70. You still got 15 scholarships available for the possible transfer portal or for the rest of this 2024 class to be bringing on, right? That's already going to be, 30 guys that have not even played a snap of college football that you're going to be bringing into the program. And just to give you guys an overall outlook, we have 50 players that are returning on this roster that have a minimum of 15 snaps or haven't snapped in college football at all. So the majority of your roster that you're bringing back after this year don't have much experience, right? You only have about 15 to 17 guys that have even made a college start on the roster after this year. So you have to make sure that the guys that you're about to bring into this transfer portal class, they don't have to necessarily be the sexy names or the big names, right? And have the most production out of any of the guys. But you have to make sure that these are quality guys that are going to be difference makers right away, because you are bringing back a lot of unexperienced guys. And when you really look at the transfer portal as a whole for this program under Mario Cristobal, the proof in the pudding shows that you're only going to hit on about 4 to 5 of your 15 to 17 guys you're getting in the portal. In 2022, you grabbed 11 transfer guys, and you only hit on 3 out of those 11, being Akeem Mesidor, Daryl Porter Jr., and Henry Parrish, who ended up leaving the program a year later. In 2023, you brought in 17 transfer portal guys, and you only hit on 5 of those 17 guys. Jaden Davis, Cam McCormick, Matt Lee, Kiko Mainoa, and Javion Cohen, right? So that's only 27 and 29%. Luckily, this past class, you grabbed 15 players out of the transfer portal, and you hit it on 6 out of 15, which was 40%, right? Which is really great. But what's the likelihood that you're not only going to hit out of 6 out of 15 of these names again, but what's the likelihood that you are going to get a Simeon Barrow type of guy, a Cam Ward type of guy, a Damian Martinez type of guy, a Zach Carpenter type of guy? It's very unlikely that you're going to get those type of guys. But I think all in all, you got to make sure that these guys that you're handpicking out of the transfer portal really fit the mold of where you're going in the direction. Because after this year, folks, we're going to really see the proof and pudding of the developing within this program, because you're at year 4. You shouldn't be going and getting 15 to 20 guys in the portal after this year. So we'll see what happens moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up something great, because as much as we always like to track stuff like what your recruiting class ranking is, everyone gets so tied up in that. But getting your evals right, because listen, sometimes the nerds from On3 and 24/7, just because they say somebody's a 4 or a 5-star doesn't mean they are. I mean, heck, they had OJ Frederic rated as a 3-star, so that they're not always right with that stuff. So your evals have to be better than those recruiting folks. And then, of course, like you mentioned, you also have to develop the players once they come in, right? So this is stuff that, again, and I get caught up with this as well, recruiting class rankings and all that. But hitting on your evals and developing the players once they come in, just as important. And by the way, those stats are very compelling, because people may not. I sure didn't realize that the hit rate on the portal players is that low, because we tend to only think about the ones who work out spectacularly or the ones who fail miserably. We tend to kind of ignore some of the ones that are kind of in that between. Anything else you'd like to add about what's going on for Miami in the portal? I mean, the Hurricanes have lost, I think, 7 scholarship players so far into the portal. How many do you expect, if you want to put a number on it, because players can still declare? How many do you think we're going to lose?
I think at least another 3 to 4, possibly 5. You look at someone like Akeem Mesidor, who has the ability to come back one more year, I believe, being injured again. He's a guy that could definitely help out this defensive line room. When I look at the defensive line portal targets that are currently out there, and what we have in this room and what we're losing after this year, I mean, you want to talk about experience, Alex. If Akeem Mesidor decides to not come back and he leaves as well, not only do you lose another player, but you only have one upperclassman in the entire defensive line room if Akeem Mesidor leaves, and that's Ahmad Moten. Other than Ahmad Moten, everyone else in the defensive line room, DN, D tackle, whether they play both positions, everyone will be either a freshman or sophomore going in after that. But besides maybe Josh Horton and Ruben
Bain would be a
Ruben
junior,
Bain.
right? He played
Ruben
in
Bain.
Yeah.
So I mean, you really don't have too many upperclassmen guys that you could rely on, and I think that's going to be a very big key going in this transfer portal. There's not many realistic options out there right now, and also as we know with the defensive line in the transfer portal, a lot of these guys are looking for a big payday. And I mean, on the defensive side of the ball, you're going to have to pay some of these guys some money in order for them to come to this program. Not to mention, even though from a stat standpoint, our defense was top 25, how are a lot of these defensive players targets that you're going in after? How are they going to look at a team like Miami, knowing from us, from a media aspect, someone like Lance Guidry isn't very liked, right? And from a football standpoint, stats-wise, yeah, he's top 25 defense, but there's a lot of criticism not only within the building but outside the building if he's really doing a great job. So what do you expect these transfer portal targets on the defensive side of the ball? What are they going to be looking at this program going into this and seeing if this is the best spot for them when you got other schools that may not necessarily be a top 25, 30 defense, but maybe they got a lot more things building with inside the program from a coaching and evaluation and a development standpoint, because unfortunately we haven't developed very much on the defensive side of the ball so far.
Yeah, we all know negative recruiting really ramps up when you're talking Miami. It's great, like when and hearing about and this was not a surprise to find this out, but everybody was helping Fran Brown, the coach of Syracuse. He's getting calls from the Georgia Tech coach, and then Fran Brown was helping out. Dabo Sweeney was calling him to beat Miami. So it's like, man, everyone's against Miami. You see the way the media talks about us. Their hate only makes me stronger. But I hate if they influence recruiting and all that stuff. I mean, the negative narratives are just crazy. We need players who want to embrace being the bad guy, right? Because Brad, when the U was at their peak back in the day, they loved being the villains. Maybe we need some more of those guys.
Listen, man, at the end of the day, we need consistency on all ends, offense, defense, and special teams. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do that on 2 out of 3 of those spectrums this season, even though as great as Cam Ward in the offense was, it's a team game, right? And we saw very quickly how all you got to do is lose one more game, and the media has no problem pushing Miami to the side. They were patiently waiting on Miami to slip up one more time. And unfortunately, we had every opportunity in front of us to control our own destiny. And yet again, we gave them reasons to let Miami be on the outside looking in. And unfortunately, I don't blame them. At the end of the day, you got to be able to take care of business, what's in front of you. And we weren't able to do that. But I will mention this before we wrap up the show. As fun as the transfer portal is about to be, all these different names that are going out, if you end up, I believe the portal, this window ends, I think, December 28th. If you're not happy with the guys that Miami are bringing in after December 28th, and you're still worried whether it's the recruiting that's still happening on, or some of these younger guys that you're hoping take that next jump. This time last year, most of our big time portal additions came from the post-spring portal opening. So this is just one window of the transfer portal. There will be another window of the transfer portal opening after the spring. And this time last year after the spring, you landed guys like Damian Martinez, Zach Carpenter. Most of your big additions were post-spring in the transfer portal last year. So just be patient. I know that's something very hard to do as a Miami Hurricane fan. I get it. But I think as of right now, man, you just got to wait and see what's out there. I do think if we don't make any coaching changes on the defensive side of the ball, me personally, I think it's going to be very hard to get some of these top defensive targets to jump on board without making any drastic changes on the defense side of the ball.
I hear you. Make sure you check Brad out at Caneswear. When's your next Caneswear pod?
We're going to do one tomorrow night, 9 o'clock Eastern, like we usually do. It'll be me, Brett, Cliff, Armando. We got the whole gang. We'll break down the same thing that we talked about today. Talk a little bit about Cam Ward possibly returning for the bowl game. And hey, it's the Pop-Tart Bowl in Orlando. It's right in your backyard, right around the corner from me. So I'll definitely be there. Hope to see you there. I'll be bringing the kids. So hey man, another opportunity to see the Hurricanes football team play and possibly Cam Ward as well. Sign me up.
Yeah, and I'm in the doghouse, by the way, because my wife and I had talked about taking like a cruise or something right during that time, like which would be around like the 27th to the 29th, and then I get the Pop-Tart Bowl news, and I broke it to her because I'm not going to miss the Pop-Tart Bowl. I know I see some Miami fans that are like, "What is this Pop-Tart Bowl?" I'm not watching that. I'm not going to that. I'm going to the Pop-Tart Bowl. I mean, I'm going to go like it's my job because it is, but I also want to support the team. So I had to break the news to my wife. We can't take that cruise, and I'm sleeping on the couch probably for the next couple of nights. But let's make this a memorable Pop-Tart Bowl if I've got to be in the doghouse for it.
Absolutely, man. Thank you as always for letting me come in here and talk some Canes football.
Good stuff. Thanks everyone so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We'll talk to you next time on another episode right here on the awesome Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.